Hello, folks. My name is Cory McCarthy. I'm the current vice principal at Everett High School. I am honored to be here tonight, to be in the presence of an amazing um, audience and an Everett-based and supportive audience as we have an open discussion and dialogue um, with Jimmy Noel, who is an alum of Everett High School. He's also someone who went to college at Boston College, played football. Now he's working with the Cleveland Browns. But I think more importantly, his story, his journey, he is truly evidence that our kids are the opportunity and they can create opportunity for themselves. And most importantly, he truly did bet on himself. And he worked collaboratively, and he used his teachers the right way. He used the city and the town to get behind him and really motivate himself. But leading this discussion is our good friend Michelle Fenelon, and hopefully she can share her good news later on in the show. And if you are looking for more information on our series, feel free to email myself. So without further ado, Michelle. Hi.
Thank you, Cory. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second part of our multi-part series on bridging the gap between sports and education. I'm your host, as Cory said, Michelle Fenelon, and I'm joined by a very special guest, former Everett High School football and basketball all-star, captain for the Boston College football team, and now a scout for the Cleveland Browns, Jim Noel. Jim, thank you so much for joining all of us today.
Thank you guys for having me. It's great seeing everybody on here. A lot of familiar faces, which is good to see.
And thank you, everyone, for coming and joining in on this important conversation. Jim, your name holds a lot of weight in the city, not only because of what you did in sports, but because of the type of student you were. What role did education play in your life?
Education played a pretty significant role. Obviously, coming from a immigrant family, parents migrated here from Haiti back in 1990. So obviously, being a third world country, parents' education is pretty big. So obviously, for me, on the real, growing up, like I wasn't always the best in school. But I think as I started to get older, I started to mature a little bit more. I started to see how much education was really important to no matter what I did.
You mentioned you weren't always the best in school. I think a lot of students have that story, or former students have that story. When did you realize that it was time to really focus on your education?
To be honest, probably when the colleges came calling. I remember specifically sophomore year. Um, did some of the smaller schools like your UNH's, University of Maine, and all that kind of stuff. They'd come and see a former athlete, Isaac Johnson, who was a year older than I was. So he ended up going to BC as well. And so I remember specifically that, I'd get called down to the guidance office, start talking to schools, and they see my grades. They say, hey, like your grades aren't up to par as to what we need them to be. If you want to go to college, you got to get them up. And so obviously it was one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, well, I don't think I'm going to go to college because I just can't see it in my future. But as the bigger schools start to come around a little bit more, I said, wow, this is a pretty real thing. Like I need to get these grades up because this is going to turn my future. You know what I'm saying? Like these schools are giving me an opportunity to get a free education, and I gotta do something with that. So after that, I started kind of to buckle down and get to work, just trying to improve my grades, and just get to college.
You did get to college. You went to Boston College, as we mentioned before. When you go to college, it's a different ball game, especially as a Division I athlete. You're in and out of the weight room. You have meetings, you're traveling, you have practice. How were you able to balance the load of a Division I athlete while making sure you're still focusing on your grades?
So I think the thing I'll say is, coming from Everett High School, I think that's a college in itself in a way. Just because obviously football is obviously, as you guys know, is pretty big in the city. And so I think that kind of thing with obviously you go to school from 8 to 2:15, and after that you'd have practice at 3 o'clock, practice for 3.5 hours. And so after that you'd have to get your academics done after practice and that kind of thing. So I think that kind of thing helped me coming from that program kind of built me for the college lifestyle when it came to academics and sports.
How did having good grades in college and in high school prepare you to get to where you are today?
Oh, I think it opened up some opportunities for me. Just being able to meet people. I know back in college, we'd have these seminars where alumni would come back, and I got the chance to meet some really great people back in college. But I think at the end of the day, I mean, it just opened up a whole bunch of opportunities for me, and there were some things that I was really interested in. Just like originally, I want to go to school for law. You know what I mean? So I was able to take some law classes at Boston College. I remember specifically my first semester in school. After predetermining that I was going to get into law, I had an attorney for a professor first semester in college. He says, "Hey guys, I'm just gonna let you know this right now. Like, it's a good thing you guys wanted to get along to help people, but it's a hard business. It's a hard business because it takes a lot of time and obviously you feel good about it, but it's just taxing on you. It's just taxing on you. But so after that, I was just like, oh man, like this is something I want to do. Now I got probably look elsewhere, but I still want to stay in that realm of helping people. So obviously I stuck with sociology. So really the good grades, I mean, it helped me throughout my college career. I mean, I can't remember the last time that somebody looked at my grades or my resume, to be honest. But it was beneficial. It was definitely beneficial down the line.
So it sounds like during college, you were thinking about different opportunities after sports. A lot of student athletes don't see life beyond playing in college or beyond going pro. You did. When did you realize that it was time for you to hang up your cleats and focus on a different career in sports?
I think it was probably my senior year. Well, I was kind of like, well, I know this isn't going to last forever, so I got to think of something to kind of that I want to get into after I'm done playing football. Luckily, I had some good people around me who were in the college side in terms of whether coaching or recruiting, and then we have our own one of our own in Everett, Mike Berganti, who's out in Kansas City. He kind of helped me along the way when he was at Boston College when I was getting recruited there, and so a lot of people had a helping hand in helping me get to choosing what I wanted to do after school, after college.
I think it's important for a lot of student athletes to know you don't necessarily have to go pro to still be around the game you love. There are many different career paths in sports. You chose to become an NFL scout. How did that opportunity come about?
Well, let's see. So I'm in my senior year of college. Someone says, "Hey, listen, like you should probably get into coaching." I said, "Oh, well, I don't know if I want to get into coaching just because I don't know if I can handle kids in terms of like coaching them and stuff like that. I'd much rather kind of work behind the scenes." And so I was with somebody who was a basketball coach at the time at Providence College. So I kind of went there, kind of checked it out, hung out with him for a little bit. He says, "Hey, listen, like you've been in this football thing for a while. Won't you get back into it?" I said, "Sure, why not?" Because at the time I was working with at youth kids in the Quincy area, and I really enjoyed that. And so we kind of had this thing where we set up where we both went to the NFL Combine back in 2014. And so that way I networked with a whole bunch of people to kind of help me get in. So I was able to meet some good people that I still talk to this day, obviously, whenever I go out to work and all that kind of stuff. And so obviously I had a coach back at Boston College who was working at the time at Temple. So I said, "Hey, listen, like I think I might want to get into the football business." So he says, "Hey, listen, just come down to Temple, see how you like it." And luckily at the time, my brother was playing basketball in the city of Philadelphia, so kind of worked out there. So I went down to Temple for a couple months, tried it out, did the summer camps and all that. Said, hey, listen, coach, I appreciate the opportunity that you allowed me. So they asked me to kind of stay on for the year. So I stayed for the year, just to kind of get my feet wet in this business. And then all of a sudden, Kansas City came calling because of Mike Borgonzi, with an internship opportunity. I couldn't pass that up. So went to Kansas City, interviewed, and then the rest is history from there.
You started off in Kansas City. Now you're with the Cleveland Browns. Pre-COVID, before the health pandemic and everything changed, what's a typical week like for you?
A typical week in a normal year is, so usually I'll leave home probably Sunday, Monday, just to kind of get my things ready for the week. Like, for example, like 1 week I'll probably go down like University of Maryland, and then the surrounding schools by there, so like Bowie State, Towson University, Georgetown. So then I hit those for that week, come home on Friday, see my family, do a whole bunch of typing every night in the hotel. I mean, when you're a college scout in the NFL, you're a lot by yourself, so you kind of get used to it. And a lot of nights in the hotel, and a whole bunch of gas station food and fast food. And so, but really, the whole week is kind of, your whole week is kind of predetermined for you when you're doing this business. So
NFL scouts are road warriors. You're, like you mentioned, in and out of hotels. Now that we are in a health pandemic, with the way COVID-19 is and a lot of restrictions, how has your job changed?
So I think, so there was a time where the NFL lifted their restrictions for us, but before they lifted their restrictions, I mean, we did everything via Zoom, but I don't think that changed a whole bunch. So instead of us physically going to a school with meeting with coaches and whoever else we needed to, I think we just did that via Zoom. So it felt like nothing really changed because I'd still be working from home, a whole bunch of computer work, you know what I mean? Except I'll be doing it from my fiance's parents' house instead of a hotel, you know what I mean? So in that aspect, I don't think a whole bunch has changed. I think it's just where I'm doing it from has really changed. But as far as the overall process, it's been pretty similar.
Hey, Michelle, let me hop in here and ask a couple of questions. This is from the not knowing and new to the area standpoint. I just think about a few questions that the kids would ask. So, being that you are working in the NFL environment, have you ever been like starstruck from like meeting like a whether it's a Hall of Fame player, or for me, like if I ever met Walter Payton, I might fall out, like literally. I know he's not here anymore, but in my lifetime, I think the greatest travesty ever in sports is the Bears not giving Walter Payton the ball on the 1 yard line for him to score in 1986. I know I'm probably the only one on the call who was living at the time, but still. So who is that person, that legend, or maybe possibly retired or current player that really led you to be starstruck?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I mean, to be honest, I don't think to this day I've ever been fully starstruck in a way. I mean, just because in college I played with a whole bunch of NFL players,
right?
And so to me they're just normal guys. Obviously, my brother being a basketball player, and so you kind of become numb to the fact that you're around professional athletes. I mean, just for instance, it was like whenever we got OBJ last year when I was in Cleveland, I know he's one of those famous celebrities that everyone wants to kind of be around, but it was like he's just another guy to me. And so as far as this whole celebrity status, I don't think up to this point I've been starstruck yet, but I know at one point in time I probably will be.
Wow. Yeah. Now, tell us about, we have Mr. McGowan on the call. Mr. McGowan, how you doing?
Hey, Mr. McCarthy, how are you?
Hey, so I know, if you don't know, Mr. McGowan sort of initiated this with Mr. Noel. I think, Jimmy, speak to the audience and a lot of the students about how important is it to have relationships after beyond high school with your former teachers and educators and people you've networked with?
Oh, it's great. It's great. I mean, obviously, it's always good to have those connections. I mean, I see Mr. Norman on here. Mr. Norman always used to beat me up.
Mr. Norman, what's up, Mr. Norman?
but it's always good having those connections. Because I mean, if you ever need anything, because I know those guys will help me out in an instance. You know what I mean? So I mean, especially Mr. McGowan and Mr. Norman and whoever else. So I mean, I was very privileged to come from the school system of Everett, knowing that people would help me and my family. So
I want to say, like, on that, Jimmy, like for me, I couldn't be prouder, like as a teacher here. I've got, not only you, but also the hosts of the show, both my former students, and Kylie's out there. I saw Alex come in, so it's great, in Everett that we have that kind of community. And I just think it's awesome that, that you're going to give that, you have this opportunity to give back to kids and have that.
And before I let Michelle continue, I have another question. What do you think is the most important skills that kids can have when they're, they all, a lot of kids, obviously, we don't blame them for wanting to go pro, but what do you see that it should be the most important skills? You mentioned networking, but also what do you think are the most important skills kids should have as they try to improve their quality of life and bet on themselves and go to college and seek a career?
The most important skill, I think, it's work ethic. Work ethic. I mean, I think work ethic will take you a long way, and that's just something that I've learned. I mean, especially with my mother. I mean, she says if you ever want anything in life, you got to be willing to work for it. And so that's something I've always been appreciative of, what she's instilled in us, that work ethic is going to take you a long way. It truly is.
Good. Take it from there, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to go back a little bit to what Mr. McGowan said about you wanting to give back. I know that's become very important for you. Why is it significant for you to give back and mentor youth, especially the ones from Everett?
Because Everett's home. Everett is home. You know what I'm saying? Because I growing up, I see obviously Stanley. Like, I grew up idolizing Stanley in his class and his peers, and so it was. I know, and so it was one of those things where like
appreciate that, brother.
You know what I'm saying? Like, no problem. So those were the guys, like, my brothers and I, like, completely idolized. We'd be at every football game, every basketball game. You know what I'm saying? We'd be around the old high school every single day, and so it was one of those things where, we want to be just like these guys. Like, these guys were going off to college and all that kind of stuff. These guys were good athletes, and so I think for us, like, we want to try to instill that in kids now, in the youth, that, hey, listen, like, you guys don't want to be where we're at. You guys want to exceed what we're doing, because that's we're trying to get Everett to be the best place you can possibly be in terms of education, sports, whatever it is, and that starts with the youth. And so I think that's where I think that's where my mind is at. That, I mean, these kids are the future in terms of making this place a better country, a better world. I mean, and I'm so excited to be part of this mentorship.
I think one thing about Everett is you never really leave. If you walk into the high school, you'll see a lot of people who were former students, athletes, that still stick around. So it's very nice that we have you coming back as well, Jim. I do want to talk about you in the NFL a little bit. You're a Black man, a Haitian man, the son of immigrants. You're working for an NFL team. You don't really see a lot of people that look like you in front offices or that have head coaching positions in the NFL. And that's been a long-standing conversation. I know you mentioned a little bit before how you didn't want to coach, but where do you see yourself taking this NFL scout career? how far would you want to go with it?
Yeah, I think everyone always has big aspirations, like being a general manager, which is something that I want to be. Being a head coach, being whatever you want to be, being the president of the United States. You know what I mean? But for me personally, I think it's one of those things where I'm not so much focused on my end goal. I think I'm the kind of dude who prefers the journey, because the journey is what's going to make me who I am. You know what I'm saying? Because there's going to be some highs, there's going to be some lows, but the journey, like at the end of the day, when you think about it, you're going to appreciate everything that you've endured to get to the point where you're at, whether it's a head coach or a general manager in the National Football League, the NBA, MLB, NHL, in any of those capacities.
So far, what has your journey taught you?
Oh man, it's taught me a lot of late nights early on. Still not a coffee junkie yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get there. But I don't know. I mean, I've enjoyed the journey, so I don't think I've endured a whole bunch of bad. But I know it's gonna come eventually, and I know I'll be ready for it. But I know it's been a pretty good ride as of now.
Before I open this up to questions, I do want to ask you, there are student athletes watching who will be watching after this is posted. What is one thing you want them to know about your journey from being a student athlete to working for an NFL team?
I think it kind of goes back. I mean, if you want something, you got to go out and get it by all means necessary. Whether that's networking, being a personal person, just because, I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm a some small city kid from Everett. You know what I'm saying? I never in a million years would have thought that I would be in the position I'm in now, working for an NFL team as a college scout. And that's just something I'm very appreciative of. So I think the message is that, listen, just keep your head down and work, because the work will be noticed at one point or another. And you have to be one to work behind the scenes in order to make what you want obtainable.
Thank you, Jim. I do want to open it up for questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself.
So I have a question. And before I go to my question, is Mr. Norman, are you here?
I am here, Mr. McCarthy.
Mr. Norman, so now you see that you have one of your former students who is, really committed to mentoring our students. How do you feel about that? And where do you think that he could be impactful?
Excellent question, Mr. McCarthy. So first, I want to thank everyone for arranging this. It's nice to see all of the faces on this call, because there's more than one of my former students sitting with their faces in this crowd. And that's actually making me feel a lot older. So just to be able to have Jim come back, because like Jim has said, I remember Jimmy running around with his two brothers in the old high school in the gym for when they were, below 6 feet tall, and they were maybe 3 or 4 feet tall, and they were always together. And Jim was always setting precedent for his two younger brothers and what to do right and how to do it. And it just shows the type of person Jim is. And it's nice that we have this network building. The fact that I know that we glossed over a little bit, but Jim's connection with Everett football and Michael Bagonzi helping him get to the place where he's at today. The network that we're building with all of our former athletes, what Alex does, what he's doing in his work, and what all the other kids are doing. It's nice to see. We really need to build this up and get more people to come on. I'm already thinking, how do we get Mike Bagonzi on? How do we get Nerlens on? How do we get Rodman on? And Rodman to talk about his experiences, right? So there's so much that we really need to build, and there are so many connections. So it's great to see this happening. Jim, I haven't seen you in a long time. It's weird when I see, like, even when Stanley, I still see Stanley, I see someone as young, and he's a vice principal now, right? And you're a scout, and for a professional team, it still blows my mind, all the stuff that people from Everett can do. And I really thank you for speaking tonight, helping out our students, because it is a family, and all roads lead back to Everett. and life takes us down different paths, but if we can come back and help out our community, that's great. So thank you. And thank you, Mr. McCarthy, for letting me speak. Thank you, Ms. Fenelon, for holding this.
You're welcome.
So, Jimmy, my next question is, it is indeed Everett related. So, given that we have some folks from Everett who are playing Division I now, are you able to give a scouting report? What do you think about the athletes that we do have there now, and what do you think of their chances?
Well, think of their chances. Well, I have no idea. To be honest, like I don't scout like Lewis or Isaiah or Jason. I'll scout in a couple of years, but like for me, like how it's based off of what it's based off of for college scouts in the National Football League is, and so I'm responsible for the northeast part of the country, and so I'm responsible for basically the University of Maine all the way down to Georgetown, right, in DC, and then I go as far west as West Virginia. And so that whole territory I drive. And so like you name, like I scout players at Pittsburgh, I scout players at Penn State, I scout players at even the littlest schools you can possibly think of. Like I scouted a player a couple of years ago from the University of Assumption University. You know what I mean? So no matter what, like I'll be scouting for the best talent. Much information on them, except for the guys that go to schools in my area, like your Boston colleges and that kind of stuff.
Good. Yeah.
Mr. McCarthy, can I just interrupt for 1 second? Because it is interesting that he mentioned the best players for football at Everett High School, but he's not scouting them. Like he has no idea about them. That's number one. And we do have someone at Georgetown, Mr. Noel, who is an Everett guy. So hopefully you keep that in your, in your scouting reports and try to help him out at some point.
Oh, I know.
And my next question, I think as you build your plan for what you want to do, and hopefully one day we're all behind you in terms of you trying to become a GM or a head coach. When you're looking at that kid who could really use your mentoring and support, what would you say to your other alums? Because I know Mr. McGowan put me in touch with an alum who is winning awards in filmmaking. So what could we do to get more alums involved, and what could you possibly say to them to sort of help them come back and really leverage a really strong, and what I think is a strong and powerful community? I've been here 4 months and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think stuff like this, like the Zoom stuff, I mean, I think it's great. Just being able to kind of see everyone's faces again, meet new people, just to kind of make this environment, the whole thing, a bigger aspect. And then as far as like me talking to them, I'll just say, hey, listen, like this is where we're from. Like we have to represent like our city, because that's just who we are. Because I am like I will bleed red and gold for the rest of my time, no matter what. Just because obviously because honestly, like Everett raised me. Like the whole city of Everett raised me. Like I don't see it as just my parents, but the whole city of Everett raised me, because I feel like at one point in time in my life, I feel like I lived with somebody. You know what I mean? So it's like somebody invited us into their home for a little bit and that kind of stuff. And they've taught us a whole bunch of life lessons, like more lessons than they could possibly ever know. And so that's something that I'll always be appreciative of. And I think people who don't live in Everett now, I think they'll start to get that as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Any other questions from the chat, from the crowd?
Jimmy, if I could ask a question, there's something that I had a discussion with someone the other day. Looking back at your high school and in your college career, and then kind of what it's taking you now, what's something that you hated doing in high school or college, but looking back at it now, you realize how necessary it was, or how like important it was?
Oh man, it's something that I hated, but something that's necessary now.
Something that like, yeah, that wasn't your favorite thing, but looking back at it now, you're like, wow, I'm glad I did that, or like I'm really glad I had that experience, or something like that.
I don't know, probably waking up early for school. Probably one of those things. Just because obviously when you're a 15, 16-year-old kid, you don't want to wake up for school. I mean, you'd rather sleep until what, 9, 10, 11 o'clock. But I think as you get older, it's like one of those things where obviously getting up early, for me at least, it kind of helps start the day. Obviously, I have a son now who's 2 years old. I mean, my man gets up probably at all times of the night. He'll get up at probably 3 o'clock. My fiance and I just look to each other like, well, you're gonna being up early I think it kind of sets the tone for the day, in terms of getting stuff done. Because obviously, if I was to be a late riser, I mean, that's some of the day gone that you could have done. They could have been productive with. You know what I mean? So I think that's something that I've taken from being in Everett, especially growing up.
What was your most memorable high school football game?
Oh, most memorable high school football game. Probably the Super Bowl my junior year. Probably the Super Bowl my junior year. Yeah, I see you laughing because Wood was on the team as well. So a whole bunch of memories there. Yeah, I mean, just because at that point we played at Gillette Stadium, and that was a pretty neat experience. And the amount of football players on that field, I think that year we had like 5 kids go to Division I schools, maybe 6, 7, I want to say, just on that field alone. So it's pretty exciting, just being on the field with all those guys.
Yeah, I think you know, those are the experiences. Those are the experiences that kids would love to hear. There's a question here. Did you work in high school? Did you have a job in high school?
And so my first paying job probably wasn't until, honestly, once I got to Kansas City. You know what I mean? Just because back in high school, like time was taken up so much by football. And so it was eat, sleep, school, football, and that was really it for me. And so really, I didn't get my first paying job until I got to Kansas City. And then that was the same thing once I got to college.
Yeah, that speaks to the true community of Everett. What is the most difficult? What's been the toughest challenge for you between leaving Everett and now you're, you know, in terms of making your way, like transitioning from playing the game to now being a, you know, working with coaches and being a coach?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
What's been your biggest challenge since leaving Everett? Because we want kids to see the world beyond Everett and come back and just doing what you're doing, right? Like Mr. Norman says, crossing the bridge.
Oh man, the biggest challenge. I mean, for me personally, I think not being involved with this kind of thing a little bit sooner. Right. Just because I in the back of my mind, I've always had a thing for just helping the youth, but it's never really came to fruition for me. And so that I think that's one of those things where I kind of kick myself in the rear, just because these kids, I mean, they need a mentor, you know what I'm saying, just to kind of help them get through get through life, in terms of being a mentor, like helping them what they want to do once they grow up, just kind of help them stay out of trouble, that kind of thing. And so I think probably getting back to the city a little bit more, just to kind of help the younger kids and the youth.
Well, I'm gonna try my best to advocate across the city for what potentially could be a powerful program to have a space when everybody returns, and then we hopefully we could get some other alums and have a roundtable, and talk about the school, the community, the impact that you guys could have, because for me, the reason I am like committed and engaged is because at some point I age out of like giving the message, right? And young folks like you, it becomes more impactful. I have transitioned to OG mode, right? So like he's just that old dude that with the beard, that little old bald black dude that he's just preaching, right? But for you, it wouldn't be preaching, and that's why I feel it's so important. So I, for one, appreciate you taking your time. I appreciate you really starting something and creating something with Mr. McGowan and Michelle here, Mr. Norman, that and you have folks behind you 100% with this. So thank you so much. Now, Michelle.
I just have one more question, because you did talk about some of the teachers that you still keep in contact with, but who were your mentors that helped you really get to where you are today?
Some of my mentors, probably in the city of Everett. I'd probably say George Wright Easy, Omar Easy. If obviously, if you've seen Omar, Omar's one of those bigger dudes, and whenever he told me something back in high school, he said, "If you don't get this done, I'm gonna kick your behind," and I made sure I got it done. And then I think outside of Everett, my old boss, John Dorsey, who was my boss in Kansas City and in Cleveland, he was one of those guys who was very, very personable. And he was a guy who believed in second chances, no matter what someone did. And I think I've kind of taken that and kind of ran with it, that everyone does deserve second chances, and just how much compassion he shows for people. So I think that was pretty cool.
Does anyone else have any more questions that they want?
I have
to ask?
one.
Oh, there we go.
Obviously, you knew it was coming. My question is, hi Jimmy. What advice? I know probably you'll never be in this moment again. Hopefully, fingers crossed. What advice do you have for all of the student athletes right now in this pandemic, dealing with wanting to play but safely, not maybe necessarily? What would you kind of tell them, because I mean they look up to you, so what advice would you give right now to student athletes during this pandemic?
I think I tell them, whatever life throws at you, just be ready to attack it, because there's going to be a hope. I know this is some sort of adversity, but just keep a strong mind. Just keep a strong mind, because not everything is going to go the way you want it to go. But you got to have a positive outlook and optimistic outlook to whatever happens. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, I kind of read up on the proposal or the ruling the other day from the city, which is a good sign. Hopefully you guys are actually able to play. But yeah, I'd say, listen, like there's going to be some adversity, but you just got to be able to get through it and keep a strong mind, because once you start to cave into the negativity and all that kind of stuff, then I mean it's not a good path to go down.
And I'll piggyback off of that, because that's a good question, Ms. Dunn, because it takes a lot of resilience, and you play for a high school coach who was tough on you guys and well respected, knew the game very well. And what is the impact that coaches themselves, now that you're a coach, what do you think the most important thing that kids should really try to get from coaches? Because you played for some good coaches.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I guess going back to the adversity thing, I mean, and just kind of it builds that mental toughness. I mean, I know I was able to build my mental toughness from Coach Dib, and I see Miss Dib on here. So Miss Dib, God bless you with your husband. But I think he's made me who I am today. With all the yelling, the cursing, and all that kind of stuff. Like, and then when I got to college, it was like this is all the yelling you got for me. You know what I'm saying? Just because I was so used to it in terms of taking that kind of yelling and the negativity, but like, because I know that he was looking out for the best for me and for all his players, And something that I was always told, and I still hold to this day, is when somebody yells at you, that they see the potential, and they're not yelling just to yell. You should be worried when someone doesn't speak to you or doesn't yell you, because then that's a sign of them giving up. And so it was honestly a good thing that Coach Dib would yell at me every single day, no matter whether it was the biggest thing or the littlest thing, because that was one of those things, those life lessons, like outside of football, outside of basketball, outside of sports, that he taught me, is that you've got to be strong-minded, because once you get to the real world, it's a tough world. It's a tough world, and you got to have thick skin.
Big ears and thick skin. That's what I always say.
Okay, could I just add something to that? It's crazy you mentioned that, Jimmy, because I just had flashbacks of Dib yelling at me a number of times in the locker room. But true story, when I actually came back to Everett as an educator, and I was blessed with the opportunity to be on Dib's coaching staff. Started off as a freshman on the team, freshman coach for his program. One of the first things that I did prior to taking the job was go to his office and apologize. And the reason I apologized was because I felt that I always took to heart, you know what I'm saying, like the screaming that he would do to me. And I always thought he was doing it to kind of single me out or try to bring me down. But once I moved on and I got older, I came to realize he was just doing it to try to make me a better person and a better man. You know what I'm saying? So like oftentimes now, having been the successor of his program now, excuse me, that's my son in the background, but now having taken over his program and trying to instill the same things that he taught me over the years, I came to realize, and I came to find some of the difficulties that he probably has had. And it just gave me the insight that, man, for all the successes that he's had on the basketball court and on the football field, it's a truly remarkable thing, the things that he was able to accomplish. So it's crazy that you mentioned that, and I appreciate that. But I don't have a question necessarily. I just pretty much have a comment. Just listen to you, man, like talk and all the things that you're saying, like, and how you reflected back on how you looked up to us when you were running around the gym with little Dib, you know what I'm saying, catching footballs or shooting basketballs at 10-foot hoops. I remember that time. And those are times that I often think back to. As a matter of fact, I was talking to Michelle Fenelon the other day about just remembering you guys running around the old Fieldhouse at all our practices and doing kid things that you guys would do. And to see you now, man, and to see the successes and know what you came from, it's truly a beautiful thing, man. And I have nothing but the utmost respect and all the praises in the world to give you, man. And I'm extremely happy for you. And I pray that you have continued success in your lifetime, and for you, your family, and obviously your brothers. All right.
Thank you. I appreciate that, son. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Yes, and I would like to thank you as well for coming on, and look forward to working with you. Look forward to learning more about all the great folks that have come through EHS, and I think as I always the one thing I've learned about being here so far is really that the kids are so amazing and for different reasons. And they all are ambitious, right? And that's something that I think that having folks like you, Stanley, Michelle, Mr. Norman, Ms. Dina Talley, Mr. McGowan, all the folks, you know, if we continue to just be committed to their futures and helping them improve their quality of life, we'll be in good shape. So take it from there, Michelle.
I want to thank everyone for joining in on this conversation. And it's a conversation that we're going to continue, especially I know I spoke with Jim about having former athletes continue to come and have this conversation and continue to mentor youth, because I think that's very important. I know, speaking from my own experience being an athlete at the high school and developing my relationship with Miss Turner has helped me in every aspect of my life. And I think it's very important that we continue showing athletes and students that it's very important to, you know, form those bonds with older people at the high school. But I do want to thank you, Jim. I want to thank Mr. McGowan, Mr. McCarthy, and Mr. Norman for allowing us to do this and setting this up. Please look out for our next part of this series. Again, thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. I know this truly means a lot to me. Obviously, I'm going to try my best to give it back everything that I got community, because I know the community gave everything that they gave to me. So I want to reciprocate that same feeling, just because I know the kids in our city. I mean, that I know they deserve the best, and I know that they're going to get the best from me and from my family.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Jim.
you.
Thanks, Jim.